Picture this: a cramped concrete cell, barely large enough to lie down in. The air is thick with silence, broken only by the clanging of bars and the distant murmur of voices. This is the reality of solitary confinement for thousands of inmates across the United States. It's a harsh punishment, designed to isolate individuals from human contact, often for 23 hours a day, sometimes for days, weeks, or even years on end. But is it really about punishment, or is there something more sinister at play? We like to think of our prisons as places of rehabilitation, offering a chance for individuals to pay their debt to society and emerge ready for a second chance. However, the stark reality of solitary confinement paints a different picture. It's a system shrouded in secrecy, hidden from public scrutiny, where human rights often take a back seat to cost-cutting measures and questionable motives. Now, before you think, well, they're criminals, they deserve it, let's remember that not everyone in solitary confinement is a hardened criminal. In fact, many are non-violent offenders, guilty of minor offenses, or even just perceived as difficult by prison staff. These individuals, often already vulnerable and marginalized, are subjected to a system that can inflict lasting psychological and physical harm. It's time we shed light on this shadowy corner of our justice system and ask ourselves, is this really the best we can do? Imagine being alone with your thoughts, day in and day out, with no one to talk to, no distractions, just the echoing silence of your own mind. Sounds like a recipe for inner peace, right? Well, not quite. In fact, prolonged solitary confinement can be psychologically devastating even for the most resilient individuals. Studies have shown that solitary confinement can exacerbate existing mental health conditions and even trigger new ones. Depression, anxiety, paranoia, hallucinations, and suicidal thoughts are just a few of the mental health landmines waiting to be detonated by prolonged isolation. It's like taking a magnifying glass to pre-existing mental health issues, amplifying them to a deafening roar within the confines of a solitary cell. The human brain craves connection like a plant craves sunlight. It's fundamental to our well-being. Depriving someone of that connection, subjecting them to prolonged isolation, is like slowly starving the brain of what it needs to thrive. It's a cruel irony that a system designed to punish can end up creating more problems than it solves. You might think that being locked up would at least keep you safe from the outside world and its health hazards. But even behind bars, solitary confinement takes a toll on physical well-being. The lack of natural light, fresh air, and physical activity can weaken the immune system, making inmates more susceptible to infections and chronic illnesses. Imagine spending years trapped in a cycle of sleep disruptions, poor nutrition, and limited access to health care. It's a recipe for disaster, leading to a whole host of physical ailments. Chronic headaches, muscle atrophy, and gastrointestinal problems are just the tip of the iceberg. The irony is that many of these health issues end up costing taxpayers more in the long run. The cost of treating chronic illnesses and providing specialized care far outweighs any perceived savings from keeping individuals in solitary confinement. It's a classic case of being penny-wise and pound-foolish. Here's a thought that might make your blood boil. Solitary confinement can be profitable. That's right, the very system that's supposed to rehabilitate individuals and protect society can be exploited for financial gain. In some states, private prisons have a financial incentive to keep their cells full, and solitary confinement, with its lower staffing requirements, can seem like a cost-effective option. It's a disturbing equation. Human suffering equals corporate profit. Now, we're not saying that all private prisons are evil empires built on the backs of inmates, but the potential for abuse is there, lurking in the shadows of a system that often prioritizes profit margins over human dignity. The lack of transparency in the private prison industry makes it difficult to fully assess the extent of this issue. But one thing's for sure, when profit becomes the primary motivator, ethical considerations can easily fall by the wayside. Here's where things get interesting. And by interesting, we mean deeply frustrating. The use of solitary confinement varies widely across the United States. Some states have recognized the inherent cruelty of this practice and have taken steps to limit or even abolish its use, particularly for vulnerable populations like juveniles and pregnant women. These states are leading the way, demonstrating that it is possible to maintain order and safety in prisons without resorting to such extreme measures. However, other states continue to cling to solitary confinement like it's a magical solution to all their prison management woes. It's almost as if these states are stuck in a time warp, ignoring the growing body of evidence highlighting the detrimental effects of prolonged isolation. This patchwork of laws creates a situation where an inmate's fate can hinge on the state in which they are incarcerated. It's a stark reminder that justice, like so many other things in life, can often be a matter of geography. Even in states with laws on the books to regulate solitary confinement, the devil is often in the details, or lack thereof. The sad truth is that many prisons lack adequate oversight and accountability when it comes to the use of solitary confinement. This lack of transparency allows for abuse to flourish in the shadows. Imagine a system where prison staff have unchecked power to place individuals in solitary confinement for minor infractions, personal vendettas, or even just because they find them annoying. It sounds like something out of a dystopian novel, but it's a reality for many inmates across the country. The lack of independent monitoring and reporting mechanisms makes it difficult to hold prisons accountable for their actions. It's a classic case of who watches the watchman, and in this case, the lack of oversight has dire consequences for the human beings trapped within the system. Okay, we've covered a lot of depressing ground here, but don't despair. There's still hope. Remember that you, dear reader, are not powerless in this situation. You have a voice, and you can use it to advocate for change. Contact your elected officials, support organizations working to reform the criminal justice system, and spread awareness about the horrors of solitary confinement. Remember those individuals languishing in solitary confinement? They are not statistics or case numbers. They are human beings, deserving of dignity, compassion, and a chance at redemption. By speaking out against this inhumane practice, you can help ensure that their voices are heard and that they are not forgotten. It's time to break the cycle of silence and indifference that has allowed solitary confinement to thrive for far too long. Your voice, combined with the voices of countless others, can be a powerful force for change. Let's be clear. Simply abolishing solitary confinement is not enough. We need to address the root causes that lead to its overuse in the first place. This means investing in mental health services, providing adequate staffing and training for prison staff, and creating alternative approaches to discipline that focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment. Imagine a world where prisons are truly places of rehabilitation, where individuals receive the support they need to address their issues and prepare for a brighter future. It's a world worth striving for. It's time to ditch the outdated, ineffective, and frankly barbaric practice of solitary confinement and replace it with a system that upholds human dignity and promotes rehabilitation. The path forward is clear, and it starts with each and every one of us demanding better for our fellow human beings. Remember, a society is judged by how it treats its most vulnerable members. Let's strive to be a society that chooses compassion over cruelty, hope over despair, and justice over vengeance.